Welcome to the Wednesday, February 8th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Brentwood. Calling the meeting to order, and if you would mind joining me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible. Thank you. If we could please have the roll, Mr. Moran.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sherry Bilderbeck,
Here.
Mark Favazza,
Here.
Jeff Hunt,
Here.
Carl Carlin,
Here.
John Nurnberger's not here, John Ritter's not here, Lisa's not here, Paul Moran here, Hart Nelson,
Here.
Foreman's excused, and Jeff Moore not here. Squeaked past a quorum there. The quorum threshold, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Moran. The next item of business, the agenda has been distributed. And I would actually like to recommend that we make a change and move the new business ahead of the old business on the agenda. That's swapping number 7 for number 6, just in the interest of the folks who are with us this evening. Are there any objections to making that change? All right. Other than that, can the agenda stand or be put forward as submitted? That change. All right. By acclamation. Next, the minutes from the December 14th meeting, 2022, have been distributed. Are there any changes or alterations that need to be made to the minutes? Seeing none, any objection to approval by acclamation? All right. The minutes from December 14th, 2022 are approved by acclamation. Next is citizen comments. Do we have any citizens here wishing to address the commission on items not on the agenda? That always gets me. Seeing none, we'll move on to now new business. The first item of new business is P&Z 23001. This is a conditional use permit for a hair salon and massage studio. Is the applicant here this evening or the representative? If you could please state your name and your address for us and then tell us a little bit about your application.
Address or business?
The business address is fine, yeah.
My name is Mary Merriweather, and I'm looking into 9012 Manchester Road. My daughter and I, she's the hairstylist, I'm the massage therapist. Our own clients, we just need a place. And the parking, there would be no problem because we are talking about working it out to where I massage and then she comes in and does hair, so it doesn't bother anybody with the while I massage.
Merriweather. We'll move generally to staff report, but if you could just hang out in case there are any questions, we'll move over. Ms. Kelly for staff report, please. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Any questions from the members of the commission? Seeing none, any member of the public wishing to address the commission on this application? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Yes. I move to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for the hair salon and massage studio at 9012 Manchester Road as presented during this meeting of the P&Z Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Favazza. Roll call vote, please.
Sherry Bilderbeck,
Yes.
Mark Favazza,
Yes.
Jeff Hunt,
Yes.
Carl Carlin,
Yes.
and Paul Moran, yes. That's unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. This will then go to the Board of Aldermen March 6th. So we have a recommendation. It goes to the Aldermen for approval.
Great, thank you so much.
Sorry, yeah, if you could. Yep. Excellent, even better, thank you. Right. Next item of new business is P and Z 23002. This is a text amendment amending section 400.1870 regarding yard requirements for certain corner lots in the A and B zoning districts. I believe that Alderman Plufka is here this evening to present this text amendment.
Thank you, David Plufka. I live at 3 Middlesex Drive. Alderwoman Tice and myself are bringing this to the Planning and Zoning Commission. It is admittedly an ordinance of limited scope, but when a third of the properties along McKnight Road currently that have side yards on McKnight Road don't comply with the current side setback requirements, we both thought that it was time to take a look at this. The ordinance is there, as far as I can tell, for two reasons: safety and aesthetics. On the safety side of it, this proposed change would do nothing to have any adverse effect on site distances. We would still maintain those frontages and the 25-foot setbacks along the side streets. So there would be no impact on cutting off site for people trying to turn it onto or from those side streets that empty onto McKnight Road. Secondly, the aesthetics. I don't know that anybody, looking at the current state of McKnight Road and the neighborhoods to the west that are in Brentwood, that this is going to have any adverse effect on the aesthetics of that edge of the of those neighborhoods. We don't think that, and so for those reasons, Nancy and I both feel that it's a better policy in this case to make the alteration in the ordinance rather than require residents to seek permission from the Board of Adjustment piecemeal fashion every time they would want to make some sort of change that violates that 25-foot setback that's currently there. Especially, again, in light of the fact that 5 of the 16 properties along McKnight Road don't comply currently with the setback ordinance. That's all I really have. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Alderman Plufka. And just to make sure, 2 questions. So it is aldermen. I saw that, and I understand it is both Ward 1 aldermen. I also believe there may be a typo just on page 3 in the staff report we received. The language is correct above, but it does say in the red, primarily to the rear line of the PLE structure principal. It should be principal, PAL. So just one quick.
Oh, you're right.
It's correct above, though, actually, in the initial language. Just wanted to note that. We'll go to staff report and then questions. Sorry. Staff report, Ms. Kelly, please.
The proposed text amendment will amend section 400.1870 to allow for a reduction in the side yard setback for those properties along a minor arterial roadway, to allow for a detached garage accessory structure per certain conditions to be 10 feet from the property line. The proposed text amendment will exempt those residentially zoned properties along a minor arterial road as identified by MoDOT, which includes McKnight Roads and portions of South Brentwood Boulevard. However, South Brentwood Boulevard does not have any residential homes on those lots. As you know, and as we've talked about on corner lots for yard regulations, a corner lot shall have a side yard equal in width to the minimum front yard setback of any adjoining lot fronting on a side street. And the minimum side yard setback in the A and B single-family district is 25 feet. In addition, under section 421.20B, development standards for accessory uses and structures, accessory structures shall maintain the same side yard as required for the principal structure located on the zoning lot, exempting unenclosed off-street parking, fences, walls, and hedges. Accessory structures are also limited to 16 feet in height, with the exception of fences, walls, and hedges, which is limited to 6 feet in height. So here you see the snippet of The road classifications by MoDOT, in the green is a minor arterial, and this is South Brentwood Boulevard, and Manchester Road is in red. Of the 25 properties along Mike Knight Road, there would be 9 properties that this would be applied to. Therefore, approximately 36% of the properties along Mike Knight Road would benefit from this text amendment. So the exact language of the proposed ordinance is that that Section 400-1870B is any corner lot shall have a side yard equal in width to the minimum front yard setback of any adjoining lot fronting the side street, provided, however, that on corner lots in the A, B single-family residential districts, A, adjoining a roadway classified by Missouri Department of Transportation as a minor arterial roadway, and B, are improved with residents having their front entrance and driveway access on a roadway other than the minor arterial road. A detached garage accessory structure may be constructed within the side yard adjacent to the minor arterial roadway, provided the detached structure is primarily to the rear of the rear line of the primary structure on the lot, no closer than 10 feet to the lot line along the minor arterial roadway, and not greater than 16 feet in height to be consistent with the development standards elsewhere in the code for detached accessory structures. And then it also currently states that in any event, the minimum side yard corner setback of a corner lot shall be no less than 10 feet. So, and that's all I have.
Ms. Kelly, just a question for you. Would this in any way allow someone to, I guess, taking a look at some of those buildings that are within this, would fall within this, already have existing garages? They may be attached or detached, but they have existing garages in other locations. Would this allow someone to basically build 2 garages under this change? On a
Yes.
corner lot? They would.
Well,
Or
I don't know about
is there
2,
another
you're-
city code that
Yeah.
prevents them from building 2 garages on a single property?
no, we don't have anything that prohibits, it's just the amount of structure. Buildings on the site is limited per site coverage, and the amount of driveway is further limited. Buildings in the B district are limited to 40%. In the A district, I believe it's 25%. So that, in effect,
Could prevent that.
could prevent, but if they have a large enough lots, they could also do that. Yeah. But if the existing home is within the setback, any expansion of the existing home would still require a variance. This is only for detached accessory structures of a parking garage. Yeah.
Members of the commission have any questions?
I do. Regarding the language of the proposed draft where it says detached garage, detached accessory structure, is this intended to be limited to only garages, or is it broader for any accessory structure as the code would otherwise define it?
I don't know what the code otherwise defines as accessory structures. You mean like sheds and things like
Yeah,
that?
something like that.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
As written, the ordinance would allow detached accessory structures, garage or non-garage accessory structures, otherwise acceptable under the code.
Yeah, I did have another question where, Brominette 1, where it asks primarily to the rear of the rear line of the principal structure on the lot. I wonder if seems a little fuzzy as far as primarily to the rear not being specific on whether it has to be completely adjacent or lined up with lot lines.
I don't know the use of the word primarily. The intention, I think, was that this new structure that might be closer to, in this case, McKnight Road, would not interfere with any sightline distances, and therefore they're requiring that it not be closer to the side street than the back of the main structure of the lot.
It's, the word primarily, I think, would be applied such that the majority of the accessory structure should be behind the rear lot line. However, we wanted to allow for some measure of overlap between the main structure and the accessory, so you could join them and enter the primary structure from the garage. So allow some of the garage to be constructed adjacent to or attached to the primary structure. But, as the Alderman points out, push back so we don't get into sightline issues and the garage overlap the main structure, but primarily, most of it being rearward and away from the primary access point.
So I've pulled up on the screen section 42120 development standards for accessory structures. And that is, it is so, the intent of this whole section is that it's subordinate to the principal structure on the site, which is the home. So any detached accessory structure is supposed to be to the rear of the existing structure. You can't have a detached garage or any other accessory structure within a front yard, like in front of the home. So that's where we were trying to make the distinction of it needs to be behind the house, behind the primary structure, but we are allowing it to be somewhat within what is called the area equivalent to the front yard setback along the side street.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up just on accessory structure? I see the definition there. Could this also be used, for example, and I'm not sure, I'm not going to probably use the correct term, but a mother-in-law house, a tiny house, would that also fall under an accessory structure in this reading of it?
No, because there's only allowed one residential unit per lot.
Okay, so it wouldn't allow it there?
Yeah.
Okay. And then if it was a shed, I believe as Mr. Hunt was asking, it would still be covered by that accessory structure total coverage as, okay.
Yeah, and I can pull that, all of the different accessory structures include like greenhouses.
Yep.
You know,
Now, I know residences, small residences on existing
yeah,
property is
children's
something that's being discussed.
playhouses, swimming pools, tennis courts, that kind of thing. Storage shed is limited to no more than 200 square feet and 14 feet in height, and it has to be 10 feet from the primary structure. So section 400-2100 is all of the listed permitted uses for accessory structures. So.
Members of the commission, Ms. Bilderbeck.
So we're talking about this as a detached, right? And that's what it's all geared towards, but I just want to make sure and revisit something that Mr. O'Keefe just said about allowing for them to be close enough so that you could use the word attach the garage to the house. If this is a detached garage, I want to make sure that it's remaining a detached garage. Otherwise, we're going to get into a whole nother thing.
Right.
This is, it does define attached. I'm talking functionally. It's proximate to it so you can run between the garage and the house.
Okay, gotcha.
Like a walkway, basically.
Yeah.
It would be separate structures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yeah,
And I didn't want anybody watching this or later to be confused that the interpretation of this was to allow the garage and the house to be attached.
Thank you.
right, no.
Okay.
It's supposed to be fully detached.
Okay, great. And then two other thoughts, or one thought and one question. So it makes perfect sense to me along McKnight, the way that the current the buildings are, the use of the road, you know, all that kind of thing, and we're talking about, you know, obviously the category of a minor arterial road. But I'm just leaving out the reference to the other area that has a minor arterial road because there really aren't residences there to have it part of the conversation anyway. I do have a question on, and I know what my answer would be and is as far as why these two things would be different, but I'm going to broach the question and maybe to Mr. O'Keefe, because I'm having fun talking with you tonight. Is what if someone somewhere else in Brentwood had a corner lot and they wanted to do this too? What is the reasoning if they're not on a minor arterial road and we've only carved out a minor arterial road in a very small area of Brentwood? What would be the reason that we would give to why this is different than those other situations on our other residential streets? I know what my answer would be, but I want to know what your answer would be.
Well, it would dependent part on what the circumstances elsewhere are. But one of the reasons for using the state's road classification system here is that roadways of that caliber tend to have a larger right-of-way. Well, the pavement may not be to the extent of the right-of-way. The right-of-way is bigger, which consumes area. We measure from the lot line, okay? But these arterial roadways have larger right-of-ways so that there's already a setback achieved by the unused right-of-way. Secondly, the traffic volumes here almost force all the residences to be oriented off that roadway. Most of them, certainly. There are some with direct access, but the predominant use is to orient access and the orientation of the structures to the side streets. So these create a circumstance that there is already an effective buffer created by right-of-way. There is a traffic impediment to utilizing the heavier traveled roadway, which forces orientation away. So there is a reasonable classification, a rational basis to distinguish this kind of lot from other lots that are on corners of different kinds of streets.
Thank you. And I think that you gave a really good technical explanation for the reason that I had in your description of the right-of-way and all of that. And I'd also add that it behooves everybody to have the houses oriented towards a side street because it's dangerous to put more curb cuts from residential driveways onto a road like McKnight or Brentwood Boulevard, for example. And even in commercial, it's something that, we try to cut down on and balance out and all of that. So I really appreciate that excellent answer to my question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Bilderback. Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe. Mr. Moran.
Yeah, just for my edification, why are we insisting on detached as opposed to just somebody, building on the side of the house and having a door from the old side of the house into the garage? I'm fine with this as it's written. I was just wondering why we're making that distinction.
That was the issue that was brought to us as an issue of concern to consider it. I think also then you're going to have to consider that there are constraints on accessory structures derived from lot coverage and size dimensional requirements. If you talk about expanding the footprint of the primary structure, you're talking about entirely different massing, land uses, proximity issues, and those I think are best controlled by the general regulations that are applicable to lot coverage and building massing, et cetera.
I'll accept that answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Any members of the public or online wishing to address either the petitioner or the commission on this topic? Actually, the commission, which we will convey to the petitioner. Hearing none. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Bildermack. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Moran. Roll call vote, please.
Jerry Bilderback,
Yes.
Mark Professor,
Yes.
Jeff Hunt,
Yes.
Carl Collin,
Yes.
and Paul Moran, yes. That's a 5-0 win.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. And I believe Alderman Plufka should know better than any when this is next going in front of the Board of Aldermen, but
Yeah, the
When he
public,
tells us it's going.
it's scheduled for a public hearing on March 6th.
excellent.
So.
Thank you very much. All right, moving back now to, well,
And we will clean up the typos before it gets to the Board of Aldermen. I've found more.
oh, yeah, see, I better proofreading than mine, apparently. I only found the one. Thank you,
Been
Mr.
better at
O'Keefe.
typing if it wouldn't have been approved.
All right, moving to old business. This is P&Z 22026. This was a text amendment regarding fence regulations of the city of Brentwood. We have heard this once before, and I believe we do have an updated staff report, and additional information has been provided to the commission. One of the things included was kind of what do some of our neighboring municipalities do, but the intent, make sure I'm summarizing correctly, Ms. Kelly, but the intent was to make sure that we had clear guidance for some of the cases that have popped up where we may not have had as clear guidance as we would have liked, and to allow staff and code enforcement to properly operate. So I will, since there is no petition, this was brought by the city, I will turn it over to Ms. Kelly for the staff report, please.
Thank you. During the previous meeting, the commission was interested in looking at the front yard fence regulations and requirements of how other cities follow their regulate such fences, and maybe clarifying some of the language throughout the sign regulations, and whether or not a solid fence for a pool is actually needed. So once I get further direction on the specific questions, then we can I will come back to you at the next meeting with a cleaner version of the draft ordinance and maybe look at eliminating some duplication throughout and try to simplify it, but I wanted to get your direction on some of the larger questions first. So as you are aware, corner lots have to have a side yard set equal in width to the minimum front yard setback. No fence is allowed within the front yard setback, with the exception of strictly ornamental fences of 24 inches in height and at least 50% open in surface, and that is our current regulations. The Board of Adjustment reviews requests for variances from fence regulations, and they have recently approved an application for a property on a corner lot that wanted a 6-foot privacy fence to enclose their backyard. That would encroach onto the side street. So in looking at several other cities, and I actually have a few more examples I was able to get than the ones in your packet, so I will upload those for the next meeting. Creve Coeur does generally limit any fence to 6 feet in height. Front yard fences on corner lots and double facing lots, i.e. rear yards that back up to a street, they're limited to 15 feet in height and 4 feet in height. Yeah, 4 feet of height, 15 feet from the property line, and is to be an open slatted decorative metal style fence. Anything other than that is reviewed at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Creve Coeur does not have an architectural review board for residential development. The city of Rock Hill also has 6 feet in height in general, but on corner lots, the fence has to be set back at least 5 feet from the property line and no more than 4 feet in height, and shall be decorative or ornamental style with at least 50% open. Very similar to Maplewood, you can go up to 8 feet and elsewhere, provided that it's 50% open. But for corner lots, it is also aesthetic and not as a barrier. It is 3.5 feet tall, 42 inches with 50% open. And no front yard ornamental fence may be constructed, modified, or altered without the approval design of their review board. Richmond Heights also is limited to, a front yard fence is limited to 48 inches and 40% open. Let's see, where they do have one exclusion that allows for residential area lots of both front and rear, where 75% or more of the existing dwellings have observed a uniform building orientation. Fences may be erected into their rear property lines, but this is only when the property backs up to a fence. It's not a road, it's not a corner lot. Then they can have a 6-foot height fence. So they do have, no fence shall be erected within 10 feet of any front property line. So they do require some setback, and that it is 40% open and 4 feet tall. Maryland Heights also has 6 feet in height. But they had this wording, which was a discussion we had at the last meeting, that where you can have internal chicken wire, plastic or metal fence interior to the yard for gardening or animal deterrent purposes without a fence permit, such fencing shall be prohibited along the perimeter of the property. So this is something that we might want to look to include, where we talked about if someone wanted to just have a little fence around the garden, then do we really care? So we might look to add this into our code as well. Elsewhere, they have a fence shall not exceed beyond the front facade of the dwelling on a corner lot into the primary front yard. A fence shall be allowed within the minimum secondary front yard. However, a site-proof fence shall not be permitted within the site distance triangle. So they do allow a fence in the side yard within the area equivalent to the front yard setback for corner lots. Similarly for double fronted lots. So Ladue says that the fencing shall not exceed 42 inches in height, 40% open, very similar to the other cities that we've looked at. They did exempt some of the roads, Clayton Road, Conway Road, Dillman Road, Ladue Road, Lindbergh Boulevard, McKnight Road, Price Road, and Warson Road can go up to 6 feet based upon the primary front yard abuts a private road. Such fences are located no closer than 6 feet from the property line. Landscaping is provided in front and should be at least 6 feet in height to screen any fencing, and shall not exceed 3 feet in height within 30 feet of an intersection of 2 or more streets. So, I don't want to read all of them, but you get the idea. It varies throughout the cities. Webster Groves has a lengthy fence regulation where and theirs is unique in that any side yard fence is limited to 4 feet in height, not just for corner lots. Only on a rear yard can you go up to 6 feet. They did exempt Missouri Road 366 Watson Road, where a single-family residence having no driveway, curb cuts, or any other vehicular access point to that road and is a rear yard. All other areas of yard within streets shall be considered a front yard with regard to the fence regulations. So there they can go up to 6 feet. And then any other design or proposal fence is reviewed at the Architectural Review Board. So the question before the city right now is, currently variances are reviewed at the Board of Adjustment. Do we want to have those fences reviewed at the Architectural Review Board since they reviewed residential developments? Or do we want to keep it at the Board of Adjustment? The other thing is, do we want to allow for front yard fences and increase it up to 3.5 to 4 feet instead of the existing 2 feet, and allow it for be 50% open? And do we want to allow for additional consideration of fences in the area equivalent to the front yard setback for corner or double fronted lots when it's clearly to the side and rear of the home? Or should that be reviewed on a case-by-case basis at the Architectural Review Board or Board of Adjustment? So, and is a solid fence really necessary to screen from adjacent residential properties for pools where the building code allows for open slatted 4 feet to 6 feet or mechanical cover? The zoning regulation says it has to have a fence that is solid. Where it's been interpreted, you can have the perimeter wood fence, but you have to have, building code requires that the pool itself have to be separated from the rest of the yard so people don't fall in and drown for safety's sakes. But does that perimeter fence have to be a solid barrier? And then we can look at including, some wording about interior fencing that is limited in height and for limited purposes. Does that really need a fence permit or, any review? Like we prohibit chain link. Do we really care if someone wants to have a little corner blocked off for a dog? If it's chain link, if it's interior to an existing fence kind of thing. So that's what I'm seeking your feedback on, and then I would come back with a cleaner version and look to simplify some of our existing regulations based upon your comments.
Ms. Kelly, let me see if I can summarize what I think I saw in some of the other, our peer municipalities. So just making sure I'm understanding. I don't see, and if you could leave it actually on that last plan, the questions. One more, yeah, there we go, perfect. I don't believe I saw that any of the other municipalities required it going to the Board of Adjustment.
Well, where it wasn't specified, it's assumed it had to go to Board of Adjustment.
Okay, so but in all of those cases, they had examples of front yard fences. I mean, they had it in their ordinances.
Yes, some of them did. I think there was yes, they had.
There was at least something. Second thing is I think I saw almost unanimous consistency or pretty complete consistency that they were looking at a 42 to 48 inch. They're in the 4 foot range.
Right.
Okay. And then I did see that at least what I'm recalling, in a majority of the cases, there were often special consideration for the double front lots, corner lots in most of the municipalities. So I'm just trying to make sure kind of where are the rest of our peers? I think that, okay.
From most of them, the review of the other cities, most of them fell in it allowed for the front yard fence to carry around to the side or rear for corner lots.
With that 4-foot
Yeah,
limit and open slatting kind of thing.
Yeah, it was the same as their front yard fence regulations, and anything else either had to get a variance at the Board of Adjustment, or if it specified the Architectural Review Board or Planning and Zoning Commission, that's what I indicated. Anything else other than the code is always have to be a variance, unless it specifies P&Z or Architectural Review Board.
Question. It did appear that a lot of them had a requirement to not, on the corner lot condition, to not have to do the same setback on the side as they did on the front. Like there was a lot of provisions, like 6 or 5 or 10 feet away from the side
There were
property line.
3 of those that did. Now I'm forgetting which ones. So,
And the logic, as
like,
I
yeah,
understand,
Creve Court is 15 feet, but their usually front yard setback is 50 feet. So they have much larger lots, and they only had 4. The Maplewood did not seem to allow it within the front yard unless it's 42 inches and 50% open. Yeah, it just said.
yeah, there were
But
several.
it still had to go to the review board, is what I could tell. Richmond Heights it couldn't be erected within 10 feet of a front property line, so.
I mean, because the logic of changing that would be that it gives a person who owns a corner lot a better chance to have a yard.
Yeah.
If they can go slightly into the side setback and so, okay, I mean, that, to me, that seems logical as long as there's a, way to control the look of it.
So I guess the ultimate question is, go ahead. Well, if we want to allow the similar front yard at 4 feet to go for side and rear, do we want to, Creve Court has 15, some have 10, some have 6. So if you have an idea of where you would like that, that would be something we could look at, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is a solid fence needed surrounding pools? That question, I don't think so. I don't think that we should require a solid fence. And frankly, it's probably better if it isn't, because people will be, what is it, like, I can't find the words that I'm looking for. I just think it'll be better all the way around for everybody if it's not a solid fence. And then, does the commission want to allow for front yard fences at 4 feet or to eliminate a fence in front of the home? If it's an ornamental fence, I don't know if I really care about having a fence in front of the home. Some people have toddlers, some people have gardens, different things like that. So I don't really have a problem with that. Doing something different with the side yards on a corner lot, coming up with something on that would be fine to me. I also, at the same time, believe that the Board of Adjustment is the right place, because I think that fence regulations are the things that make people the most crazy. And we can get into so much trouble if we're subjective about it. And I think, really strongly feel like the Board of Adjustment is the right place. Like if we change the regulations and essentially make them less stringent, more consistent with our neighboring communities, I think it's reasonable that if people are going to want to go beyond that, that they would have to take the step of taking it to the actual Board of Adjustment. And I've sat on the Board of Adjustment before, so I'm familiar with that process. Then also, I wanted to ask, and I might have missed it in here, or ask the question if we needed to flesh it out more, because we talk about ornamental. Do we define that in here? I noticed some of the other ones talk about the materials, like one of the ones you just had up like it's not wood in this case, it's like wrought iron, or it's like powder coated, treated whatever, but like how do we define ornamental for the purposes of this ordinance draft?
The code does, I'm pulling it up now, define it ornamental, open slatted. It doesn't specify, it allows for wood picket, vinyl, I think only thing that we don't allow is chain link, but I'd have to double check that one.
I mean, I have a wood picket fence with gaps between it, not in my front yard, in my backyard. I have a traditional, like, setup in the middle of a block, right? So I have no fencing in the front of my house.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I would consider the fencing that I have with the wood slats to be, it's a nice fence, but it's not ornamental
Yeah.
in my mind. So
So
maybe.
the code does say it has to be at least 50% open. And specifically for front yard, it's no more than currently 24 inches in height, so we would, including the column embedded vertical support, and is at least 50% open of its surface and viewed at any line perpendicular to the vertical plane of the fence for the entire thickness of the fence. Its primary aesthetic and not as a barrier, wood, posts, pickets, boards, and lumber shall be painted so as to be compatible with their surroundings. All wood, steel, concrete, masonry columns or embedded vertical supports shall be securely anchored so they cannot be moved out of position. Crossbars, railings, columns, so no wire or steel mesh or wire fencing may be used in a manner as part of ornamental fencing, but steel or wire mesh fencing may be used as a temporary protection around shrubs in the required front yard, but in no case shall such steel or wire mesh fencing exceed 18 inches in height.
So the only difference between that and the fence that I have in my backyard, because I presume, and tell me where I'm wrong, that staining it is the same as painting it.
I would assume so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too, but I just
And this,
clarified. But-
so I don't know where you live, but if it's in your backyard, there's no requirement elsewhere that it has to be painted. It's only in the front yard.
Okay, I guess it's just smart to do it, because if you don't do it, then your fence will fall down quicker, but so I just would never not treat it. But anyway, so the only difference between the one that I have in my backyard and this is the 50%, because if the pickets are like this wide and the gaps are maybe like this wide, you know, I mean, they're pretty big gaps in there,
Yeah,
but it's not equal to the size of the board.
right.
But we have no limitations there, like, I mean, I don't know why anybody in their right mind would want to do this, but just to say, for example, like, they could have like a 6-inch wide board, a 6-inch wide gap, a 6-inch wide board, and a 6. So when you're thinking about the definition of ornamental and you're talking about putting something in the front yard, that may behoove us to have some more conversation about.
What, yeah.
Yeah.
Like what that looks like, you know, and maybe it might be slightly different, narrower definition of ornamental related to the front yard.
So, yeah, so actually, Creve Coeurs fence regulations specified an open slat metal style, similar to the following, as what they describe as ornamental. Metal fencing is allowed.
And I think that's more akin to what, but the powder coated, not just the plain metal.
Yeah.
But that's more akin to what I think most people tend to think about when you think about ornamental fencing. I mean, of course, the first thing you think about is the really pretty wrought iron that not anybody can afford. But, you know, that kind of look, or a material that gives that kind of a look, and as far as like a front yard, and is
Right.
what I think more people would think about. And then another thing about that is the current regulations about 2 foot, I mean, it's just kind of worthless.
Yeah.
It serves no functional purpose, it merely is a decoration. Anyway, I think I beat that enough for now.
No, I think, and just making
Thank you,
sure
Mr.
that,
Chairman.
Ms. Bilderback, so again, it was, I think one of the key things was looking for more definition. You were in support of that and provided some suggestions, but then keeping it with the Board of Adjustment simply because your belief is with those further definitions, then exceptions may be even more rare and we would want them there. Is that correct?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So just trying to understand where everyone's
And
position
to
is.
help our
Ms. Bill-
neighbors get along, good fences make good neighbors.
I've been told that before. Mr. Carlin.
Thank you. I would think with good definitions, I would agree actually that I personally wouldn't want to see it go to the ARB. I think that'd be a kind of a dangerous place to do it. So I agree the Board of Adjustment with good definition is a good place so with that point of view stated, I think I'd like to give people some discretion as to the nature of what ornamental fences could be. I don't think I want to limit them to just have to do one type of metal. I'm not saying anyone said that, but I wouldn't want anyone to, just one type of metal fence for the whole city. That would be a little bit draconian. So however we wrote that, there should be a way that, you know, decorative could meet certain standards for people's housing of the neighborhood or whatever. And then the last question you ask about the temporary fences in the backyard, say for rabbit proofing or something, like, I think we need to have some capacity to allow that, because a lot of people have little gardens in their yard and things, and if it's temporary and, you know, I think that should be okay. So, thank you.
Any other members of the commission? Mr. Moran?
Yeah, I just want to agree with Sherry about the pool fence. I think that's one we can just knock straight out, right? If you want total privacy, build a solid one, but we don't have to enforce that.
Yeah,
Right, so I think we could take that one out.
okay.
Any others? Did we help at
So-
all? Actually, I
Yes.
will ask, this is an
Sorry, Mr.
opportunity for
Chairman.
public comment. Sorry, Mr.
So
Moran.
I'd just like to congratulate Maplewood on not trying to distinguish between a fence and a screen. Everywhere they wrote fence or screen.
Yeah.
And because the person who's not here today, Matt, started going off on that, and they wanted to pull out a gun and shoot myself. So, yeah, I think we should just go fence or screen and not try and distinguish between the two. That's a recommendation. just from me.
Definitions are very useful things when you're writing these. A fence equals a screen, then you don't have to do it multiple times. Excellent. Any members of the public wish to address the commission on this topic? This will be, I believe, probably carried over. We have further discussion to do. A question, I guess, for the commission is, do we want to do that in subcommittee, or are we looking to do that at our next regular meeting? With staff, hopefully, again, getting some guidance at least from us, and then we will have something put in front of us. Is there a will of the commission here? Let me turn it over then to Ms. Kelly. Do you think that it would be better to have, would you be ready for us for the next regular meeting and we would have time to discuss the preparations there? Or would you rather have further input in a subcommittee meeting?
I don't know. I think the regular meeting might be good to get everyone's, I would just, currently I'm thinking that we would just carry the front yard fence around to the side and rear to allow for any of that. But if y'all want to have it step back, let me know. 5 feet, 10, 10. That's the biggest question, but I think that's something that the larger board can handle. Unless y'all feel like there's some design considerations elsewhere that we want to consider. But y'all do seem to think Board of Adjustment is the correct
Boards of
location. Yeah.
Mr. O'Keefe, just to make sure I'm clear, I don't want to violate sunshine with us holding an unofficial meeting. If we directly provide this input to Ms. Kelly, individually as members of the commission, is there any concerns with that?
Individually, there's no concern.
Let's just make sure we're not all CCing each other, because then we suddenly have a meeting. So we will, if you have any input to provide Ms. Kelly, please do that directly to her via email. Anything else from the commission on this subject? Do I have a motion then to hold this over to table this, and we will take it up again at
So
our
moved.
next meeting? Moved by Mr. Carlin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Favaz. I think a voice vote will suffice. All those in favor of tabling? Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, this motion is tabled for the next regular meeting then. Next, we are up to the aldermanic report. We do have an alderman. No report. All right, we will turn over to the director's report. Anything for us, Ms. Kelly?
So this item will be carried over to the next meeting. We also have another CUP use and possibly two, at least one more text amendment for the next meeting. The Sustainability Commission is looking at some new regulations and clarifying language of our stormwater ordinance and lighting to lower the light level of brightness on LED lights. Oh, yes, and another text amendment. I was like, there was one more. La Arches at the corner of Linsinger and McKnight has come in for a text amendment. They were initially approved as a group home. They now would like to operate as an adult daycare and would like to also have a group home on their site. So we're looking to include that as part of, as an allowed use as a conditional use in the residential districts, and then they would come back for the CUP and site plan for their development there, so.
All right. Any other items of business from the commission? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion adjourned by Ms. Bilderbeck. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Recording stopped.